Questions presented during the September 28th and 29th tapings of Candidates Q&A were compiled by media representatives. The views expressed are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of the City of Cupertino. Five candidates are in the running for 2 seats on Cupertino's City Council. As part of the City Channel's ongoing coverage of this race toward Election Tuesday, you're about to see an up-close and personal introduction to one of those 5 candidates. This is Candidates Q&A with tonight's featured City Council candidate, Wally Dean. Tonight's segment was recorded on Friday, September 29th.
Welcome to Candidates Q&A. I'm Miguel Salinas with the Cupertino Courier, along with Michael Cronk with the San Jose Mercury News. We're joined today by Mayor Wally Dean, who is seeking re-election to the Cupertino City Council. Welcome, Mayor Dean.
Thank you.
I'd like to begin by referring to your ballot statement in which you list a number of accomplishments. I'd just like to know which one of them are you the most proud of and why?
Golly, it's tough because it's broadband. There was a lot accomplished in 4 years, and I think the significant sign that you can tell a lot was done, this is the first election in a long time where there's not a lot of controversy. In other words, when people first started talking, they're saying, what are the issues? That's a good sign. When you have to ask, what are the issues? There were issues in previous elections, and there were very bitter issues. The system is working. And that's why it's, the hillside was one, the downtown plan was one, the schools, redoing all the schools, extremely proud of that. And I think the schools are extremely happy with that. The CityNet project, first city to come online, that was exciting. There's a bunch of things, it's not one thing.
In the last election, a political consultant was hired by one or two of the candidates. In this election, political consultants have been hired by some of the candidates. You have expressed the thought that perhaps the hiring of political consultants and the spending of sizable amounts of money at a local level, such as a city council race, may be inappropriate. What is it about that concerns you, and why do you feel that?
I'll tell you, it's really discouraging that people feel the need to hire someone to speak for themselves, other than themselves. I think this year now we have media consultants, not only campaign consultants, personal consultants. I think above the 5 candidates, 3 have consultants. How do you know where they stand? If someone is presenting words and documentation for them, what are they doing? How much is that of theirs? There's a problem there. I think this is the most base form of government available. This is where the citizens have the closest access to the people once they're in office. It's like truth in advertising. Once you're in and you're making decisions for people, those people are counting on you for what you represented as a product. And I'm not sure, I saw one the other day of one of the candidates shaking hands with a senior citizen. It was a little flyer that went around. And I was, if people understand the cost to get that document in front of them to convey that message, I think it would be a lot different than, oh, isn't that cute, he's shaking someone's hand. There's more to it than that. They're playing off, it's a marketing game. And I'm not sure that's what local government is right now.
Mayor, on your second time around, if elected, what would be your #1 priority and how would you go about accomplishing that?
The #1 priority, it's not for just Cupertino, it's government in general. What we're going through is a total revision of forms of government. And a lot of people aren't aware of that, and it's too bad because it's going to hit them right between the eyes. What you hear on the evening news is budget revisions in Washington. And people can't relate that to what's going on in Cupertino. That's too bad. First thing. Yesterday we had the announcement from the Supreme Court, 5-2 decision on the transportation initiative. Okay, that was a tax. That's kind of setting the stage for what's coming from Washington. When I was back in Washington for the mayor's conference, we had an audience with Clinton, the Speaker of the House, Gingrich, and other senators, and there were their public personas, and then we got to go behind the scenes and spend some large amounts of time with these people. And what shocked me was the financial stability of the country. And I mean, when the Speaker of the House says, we've got 5 years on Medicare and it's broke, and I'm sitting there, I wasn't expecting that answer. When you look at some of the other financial responsibilities for the just United States in general, and they're talking about a D-date of 15 years and the United States is broke, you're not ready for that. I wasn't ready for that. That's what's motivating the budget cuts in Washington. The problem is, with those budget cuts and the size of those budget cuts, the ramifications not only to the states, the counties, but local government, we're going to get hammered. The way you see government interacting in the communities today, it's not going to be like that. Forget it. The CDBG, the low-income housing, the mass transit, it's gone. It's gone. Within 3 years, gone. Yesterday, the Supreme Court decision was the mass transit aspect. That was state with subsidies from the federal government. We're talking the original source at Washington level will be gone, or so severely cut back that the form of government right now, the issues that were coming up before, the hillside policy, the downtown plan, that's nothing. You need to start forming alliances right now to get you through financially in the next 4 years. It's not business as you've known it, and it's coming.
Well, it seems like from your answer that educating the public to these issues is important. How do you expect to do that when there are a lot of people who are pretty apathetic to government these days?
It really is, and that's too bad. And I think a lot of that was the election of 2 years ago, when the consultants came in and you started to see slam politics, what some of the candidates called negative political process. I thought it was too bad. I stayed completely out of it. I thought it was too bad it happened. What happened yesterday is we got a letter from Susan Hammer, and she asked for all the mayors to meet in her office. And what they did is they brought the delegation from Washington in, from HUD, from Small Business Bureau, Commerce Department, all that. And they said, you need to understand, here's what's coming down. And here's what these budget cuts in these areas mean to you as it stands today. And I think at the federal level, they're concerned because exactly your question, the message isn't coming down. So as we know government at the state level, county level, get ready for a major change. What was coming in as the Great Society or the New Deal or something like that, where all these programs flourished, it's now the opposite. And what they have to do is, it's not a Democrat or Republican issue, it's the United States has a financial problem, and they need to take strong action to correct it. And part of that is redoing the phase of government. You see an implosion in Washington, not an explosion, an implosion. And that's going to ricochet all the way down the line. And I mean right in Cupertino or Sunnyvale or Saratoga, it's going to hit us all. And what we've just gotten used to is we've been fooling around with Sacramento. And I mean, they've been going after us heavily. Now think of the next one when the federal government comes down. The ramifications are huge. And those are the issues that need to be talked about in this election and the next election, because those are the challenges. I mean, they're invisible now. That's the problem. The people that are following it should have some idea. They don't see it.
And how do you propose to prepare our community for that, as you say, the issue coming down the line?
One of the issues that someone's trying to bring up, or a small group's trying to bring up, is the general plan and keep businesses out and stuff like that. You better not take that step. I mean, you better keep every option open right now. We need to see where the cuts are going to be made. We don't know yet, but we know they're cuts. We know they're drastic cuts. You want to go into, I'd say, the next at least 5 years with an open door. You've got to be flexible. You're going to have people that are extremely creative. You're going to have the people that think on your feet, and this comes back to the campaign issue of, if someone is speaking or writing for these other individuals, what are you getting as a product? What is really there? Because the nomenclature of government as you know it today, it's not going to be there.
Well, one of the questions I wanted to ask you was about affordable housing. You've been very strong in the past in talking about the number of units that Cupertino would be on the hook for, according to the state, and you had questioned those numbers. Is there, in your view, a need for affordable housing? Is it a legitimate issue in the city and something that has to be addressed? If so, how much, where, and type? Or is, as you said, if some of these that won't be an issue because there won't be subsidy funds available to do that.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's apple pie and motherhood. I mean, how can you say you don't want affordable housing? There is a spot for it. Where I have a major problem is when you start working with the state of California, and you see, my rule for the state of California is, if you want to see legislation, follow the money. Who's putting the money up to create the legislation? that money came from developers. In other words, they wanted to build entities. They call it whatever they want. The Bank of America is behind it because it's an easy equity sale. Okay. My problem is the state forced us into an issue where we wanted to put massive amounts of housing along Stevens Creek, which is a transportation corridor. Okay. As of yesterday, the state Supreme Court threw out the entire transit plan for Santa Clara County. Whereas I didn't think the transit corridor would work anyway. But even then, now you don't even have that. Now you have the federal government's cutting back. Where's the transportation corridor? The model that was there is, they said we had 42,000 jobs in our city. Apple, Tandem, Hewlett-Packard combined, maybe 11,000 total. Okay, we contested that and they dropped it down to 36,000 jobs. So we had a job housing imbalance. Okay, so they're telling us we have to build. Now one of the items they're saying you have to build 5,000 houses. Where? We're built out. Where are you going to build it? So I mean, the entire setup from the state, I thought was a fraud, complete fraud. 4 years ago, one of the issues in the Foothill policy was that at that time Kaiser, or a spinoff of one of their corporate partners, wanted to put 3,300 houses in our hillsides. That was a hot issue. We resolved it. We don't want that. We moved it to county standards. Okay, that was important. Okay, we've addressed the issues. The low-income housing thing is always going to be around, and what's going to be really more important is when that funding is cut, what are you going to do with the people? In the mental hospitals, the social services, it's going to be devastating. And it's like the American Disabilities Act. The federal government legislated for this to go into place. No funding. Now we have a law on our hands. Who pays for it? The citizens of Cupertino pay for it. Now the federal guys say, hey, we didn't raise your taxes. Now who's carrying the burden? We are. We see something similar coming down.
You say that that the city is built out and that the jobs housing imbalance is quite an issue. Is it possible to balance residential growth with staying competitive in a burgeoning high-tech industry? And how would you accomplish that?
Staying competitive in a high-tech industry. I think the base number that was brought in from the state is baloney. When you have built-out communities, you can't meet that. So you're automatically in violation. That doesn't make sense. If it's a regional issue, fine, let's address it that way. I think the state is introducing something that never should have been brought about. I mean, it's smoke. The problem with the general plan 4 years ago was that we mandated that Apple, Tandem, Hewlett-Packard, when they expand, they have to build housing on their property. I think that's a joke. I don't think that's the role of city government to tell computer companies or manufacturers that are now in the real estate business. I have a problem with that. In that 4 years, 2 of those 3 companies have had losses. Now, previous to that, no one would have ever thought of that. They're always the stable giant. They're always here. And that, in fact, is not true, unfortunately. And those are problems you have to deal with. Now, as the problems unfold for city governments, the same thing is going on in the computer industry. So why are we hammering these guys? I have a problem with that.
So, how do you propose to, keep the high-tech folks in Cupertino, yet trying to maintain a slow growth attitude?
The tack that we're taking is simply this: is that we have building space available. We've just seen Symantec grow. They've just moved in with their new divisions into the city center complex. Along with that, Canon moved in, the entire floor. They took over the entire first floor. Along with that, we've had Seagate come into town. They're in the process of moving in. Those are major players. They're not building new buildings. Now what we're trying to get is their sales offices for revenue. In other words, here's the choice that the taxation system sets up, is if you're based, our major income is sales tax. Not property tax, sales tax. In a retail sales environment, you're looking at $7.50, $8 an hour, $10 an hour. By bringing in the high-tech companies and having them have sales offices here and generating income, you're talking tenfold. Not only the money is available for the individuals that are working here to spend, but the money generated from there. Sunnyvale had a similar incident with Hewlett-Packard. Hewlett-Packard had a sales office there. What that meant to Sunnyvale last year was $1.5 million sales tax. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. We wish that office was here. Clear and simple.
In talking about businesses and attracting business and the types of businesses, there have been several communities in recent months. I've Saratoga, for example, turned down a Home Depot. They didn't feel that was appropriate in their city, even though it generates a great deal of sales tax. And other cities have given incentives, San Jose and Campbell, places like that, to attract these kind of businesses. I think you've remarked before that those type of businesses are not what you're talking about coming to Cupertino. What kind of business, besides the sales offices and the high-tech companies, what kind of businesses would you like to?
Let's set the groundwork. Let's set the groundwork mathematically for the matrix that I'm talking about. You have to realize, when you start comparing Saratoga with Cupertino, Mountain View with Cupertino, you're thinking that everything is the same. And that in fact, is not true. We get, from our property tax dollars, for everything that's collected, we get 2%. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mountain View may get 15. San Jose may get 18. There's some, I think Mountain View may get 20%. Okay, so they have this huge property tax money coming in compared to our little 2%. We are the second lowest in the entire county. Monte Sereno is the only one. So a problem that affects Saratoga is a little different than Cupertino. Now we're forced, since we're getting nothing on property tax basically, we have to go out and find sources. Now we're getting calls from the Los Angeles area. The Cupertino address is a hot address, but they're software companies. They want to come up and they want to develop software. Now the problem we have is the dynamic that we're preparing for 3 to 4, 5 years down the line. We have to have sales offices. If someone wants to move into our city and we want to help them get there, what are you going to bring to the party? In other words, to the business. That question's never been asked before.
But are we talking, trying to see more retail, a more diverse base, where you're not relying so much on one particular industry or business, because then you're subject to...
Oh yeah, no, maybe I missed. Let me tell you what, if you saw the report from our finance director, the strategy is actually to make the sales base from retail sales smaller, and to go out and generate industrial sales at a larger degree, just for that very reason, so we aren't dependent on onesie twosies. And that's a problem. If you've seen Valco, if you look at the demographics of Valco, it's not what was there 10 years ago. The whole philosophy of the shopping center. Now that's trying to be addressed now. They have a new ownership, we're going for it.
Okay. Mayor, among the decisions where you did not vote with the majority of the council, which one are you the most unhappy with the final outcome?
There's been a bunch. The dynamics of the council has changed over the 4 years. By accepting the job housing balance on the general plan, that was really hard. The housing requirements for the corporation, philosophically, that's not, I had a problem with that. The issue when we were trying to get funding for the schools, that was a problem. We had somebody that was willing to give them the money, and instead it went to concrete in the middle of the street. That drove me nuts. And a spin-off of that is I really think the educational process creates value for this city. Whether it doesn't matter what department you're in, by having hot schools and a good location and these businesses here. It's not one element. I mean, people are saying, hey, it's only us, think of us first. You can't do it that way. I mean, you have a living, breathing organism here and everybody's contributing, and you've got to, that's what's going to be tough in the next 5 years. As these cuts come down, I mean, it's going to be teamwork. That's where we are.
Well, just a follow-up question to what you said about 5 years from now. Considering the current political and social climate here in Cupertino, where do you see the city in 5 years?
It's going to be interesting because we have one candidate right now saying that, 4 Valcos and 5,000 houses and all that. I mean, it's gone right over his head. The issue is simply this: the general plan is not an issue. You've got basically 4 years left on a general plan. 4 years. You're talking about, at the beginning it was the issue on Tier 2. Tier 2 is not an issue. No one is going to touch that. No one is going to touch it. And what's happened is, if you follow the arguments, very delicately, they have dropped the issue of Tier 2 because they know it's unobtainable during this general plan cycle. The interesting facet that's going to happen will be in I'd say 4 years, when you start forming the next general plan. Because any of the growth limits that are under this current one will never be met. Never. And what's happening is some of the rhetoric coming out of some individuals is causing some of the companies to panic, a la Hewlett-Packard and trying to set up something committing to the land that they own. That is a spin-off of some comments. And I didn't vote for the general plan, but once you enter an agreement from a planning base, whether it's business, whether it's living, whether it's anything, I think you're obligated to live with that. Now, the decision makers that sit in City Hall have some leeway there, a la the diocese. Okay, there was a difference. It's a living, breathing document. You're not stuck. And I think you've got to be careful of what is said in public, and that was one of the spin-offs. The next general plan is going to be a hotly debated topic.
Why so? I mean, just because of the growth issues?
Yeah, you're going to have a couple dynamics at work. You're going to have the federal budget cuts really nailed in. Hopefully, California will be over the defense cuts by then. Hopefully, the Silicon Valley will be really computer intense. So we have different dynamics there. But you're going to have a question of, look at where the tax bases are set up in the state of California right now and how much the cities get. I think we lost last year from just the state, I think it was $600,000 taken away from us that we normally got. We had, and I think it was on the open space issue, we were sitting here at 90 acres of open space that the city had. We went out and we bought 100 more acres. That's a major investment. We spent, and was by vote, $33 million acquiring that. That's good. That's the standard of living we want. But the problem is the money that was coming in to cover those is changing. And that's what's you're going to have to see in that next general plan where the shakeout is. And nobody's going to be able to tell you that.
I want to ask you a question in terms of the community. Of course, at the local level, you strive to reach as many people as possible in segments of the community, involve as many as possible, and you did support the Diversity Summit. Mm-hmm. Do you feel there is a large Asian population in Cupertino, and some people have said we need to involve them more, came out of the summit. Do you feel that that segment and others have been well represented thus far? Or do you think that there is need to do some outreach, if you will, or pull them into discussion of city issues and problems?
You know, I really think the community is really well mixed, both on a communicative level, on an artistic level. I don't see, if you're looking for ethnic backgrounds, we've shared that. We've had the Chinese New Year's, first time this last year. It was really neat to see. We've had the Cherry Blossom Festival. We had the Ikebana Award. The Ikebana thing was amazing. I mean, people were coming in from Japan on that. It was like seeing Elvis come out of the grave. I mean, they were that impressed. I mean, they were literally artists there. But I think the community, we had 4,000 people go through the Quinlan Center. That's neat. And that's everybody. That's a mix of everybody, whether it's Art and Park, the Drum Festival. Hopefully, hopefully we're on
So you
target.
think there has been a celebration of the diversity and at the highest level?
I think so.
And follow-up question, in starting CityNet, it's been up and running and it continues to evolve. Do you think that, from what you've experienced so far, that has been a good tool or an effective tool in increasing communication amongst the different government agencies, and particularly in communicating with City Hall, having the residents?
It's a tool. Whether you use it or not is up to you. We're not trying to ramrod anything, but here's what's happened is we have a networked City Hall. We never had that before. And to the people on the outside, in other words, someone's sitting at a desk and 2 desks down, there's another employee, they could say, hey, and yell that way. They couldn't send messages from computer to just a basic networking system. That's taken care of. We have a networking system with CityNet that any resident can go out and talk to anybody at City Hall, send any message. So you have a vehicle. We have the open council meetings with the live council. People are calling us from all over the world. How are you doing that? How are you doing that? I mean, that's what's going on. First post office in the United States, interactive, so you can order stamps or mail pickups, address changes online. In other words, creative things. That's been the most exciting. It's been a lot of work, but it's we've got kids involved in it. That's probably been one of our biggest satisfactions, and yet it's only a very small niche.
I guess this will be our final question. Mayor, can you name 3 character traits that you believe will make you, or believe that make you an effective council member or mayor?
First, you need a sense of humor. You really need a sense of humor. We've had incidents. The last one was the Highway 85 group that came in. Someone had passed out flyers telling all these people that we were going to have a hearing. Well, they didn't tell us. And all these people came in, and they were upset at us. That caused a problem. I think you need to be extremely creative. You need whatever you base as an income source or something like that, you're going to have to get flexible. You need the creativity. And then you need to sit back and try to mix in with the community as much as possible to see the different entities of the community and get a flavor for it, and not just one segment. Now, those would be the 3. If you're going to, and you need a hell of a lot of time, because this isn't a part-time job. This isn't a thing where it used to be where you volunteered your time and you'd show up to the meetings and all that. It's not that way. You've got to be doing a lot of work here if you're going to do the job effectively.
Is that indicative of just the community growing, or what?
You know what it is we've trimmed the staff by 21%. We've had to make financial cuts because of our budget problem, and yet the big one is still coming. So what we're trying to do is council itself. We have on our council right now, we have 4 retired people, 1 working person. Those 4 people are putting in a heck of a lot of time. I mean, more than you would ever. It's just not sitting here and standing in front of a camera. I mean, a lot of time, and that's a major commitment. I think that the dynamics of the job have changed, and you're going to need to factor that in through your political consultants.
Right. Thanks. Do you have any final thoughts?
Thank you.
Well, it seems that that's all the time we have. Thank you for joining us, Mayor Dean, and good luck on your campaign.
Thanks, Sonny. Thanks, Matt Lott.
Election Tuesday is November 7th. Please vote for the 2 candidates best suited to serve on Cupertino City Council. And keep watching the City Channel for more special City Council election programming.